It is important to bring down the temperature, to bring that temperature down of that political.
Stop calling him a threat to
rhetoric.
democracy, then.
We've been very clear about that.
How about that?
If anything, from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question. The question that you're asking, it is also incredibly dangerous.
What?
In the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching.
But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda.
What?
And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged.
What? The Trump assassin was apparently waved on into the country. He was flagged by Border Patrol. And then when they referred that over to Homeland Security, Homeland really wanted nothing to do with it. You can see the story comes from Just the News, and it is a doozy. They say that the Trump assassin was interviewed by Customs and Border officials when he came back from Ukraine last year. They flagged him for further review and investigation, but when they sent it over to Homeland Security, they declined to act. The June 2023 encounter with Routh was at Honolulu. It's confirmed by Border Patrol entry records that the Just the News agency found, and is the latest tale. The records show that border officials knew that Routh had traveled to Warsaw, Poland, near the Ukraine border. Then he went to Istanbul, Turkey, and he admitted in his interview that he'd been recruiting as many as 100 foreign fighters from Taiwan, Afghanistan, and Moldova to join the war. Routh even gave U.S. agents who interviewed him a business card that portrayed him as the director of a, quote, international volunteer center that also claimed to have contact in Syria and Israel and more. He also described who had underwritten his efforts to recruit foreigners. So the Border Patrol wrote, the subject, who is here at the border trying to get into the country, is a U.S. citizen who had traveled to Kyiv, Ukraine for 3 months, wanted to help recruit soldiers to fight in Ukraine from Afghanistan, Moldova, and Taiwan to fight against Russia. Now, the subject stated that he does not get paid for his recruiting efforts, and all his work for the Ukrainian government is strictly volunteer. He provided his recruiting business cards, which has been uploaded, which list his recruiting partners and that he speaks with to recruit soldiers from Afghanistan, Romania, Pakistan, Syria, and Israel. The memo stated that the Ukraine advocate was referred to Homeland Security investigations, the lead investigative organ for Homeland Security. But Homeland declined to pursue the matter. They said HSI was contacted and they refused the case, the interview memo stated. Homeland Security officials did not immediately respond to a request for comment, and the memos add to a body of evidence that there are some problems here. This guy showed up in court. We covered everything that happened at the court hearing on yesterday's show, but apparently he was laughing and smiling ahead of his first court appearance, was wearing scrubs and shackles, walked into court, smiled and laughed about 3 to 4 times as he was speaking to his attorney. No cameras in there, but he was charged with 2 gun charges. We read through the indictment in the court documents yesterday. Routh appeared fully engaged, will be formally arraigned on September 30th. And so that's what he looked like when he was in the back of the police vehicle. Now, the White House has come out and they say that they forcefully condemn all acts of violence. We don't want any violence in this country. Then Karine proceeds to call Trump a threat to democracy.
Thanks, Karine. Donald Trump blamed President Biden and Vice President Harris for the latest assassination attempt against him. He claimed without evidence that their rhetoric is causing him to be, quote, shot at. How is the White House responding to those comments?
Well, I love that you added without evidence, because I want to be very clear here. The president and the vice president have always forcefully condemned violence in all forms, including political violence, and we certainly have never encouraged any violence in any way. If anything, this is a president and a vice president has been pretty forceful about that. And, you know, when it comes to differences...
Okay, first of all, that's not true. These people talk like maniacs all the time. Trump's defense team and campaign officials, rather, put this together. They said, here's a couple examples when the Democrats and the lefties like Karine, Kamala, and Biden, when they've caused some incendiary rhetoric to emanate from their mouths, which might create some problems throughout America. It's their standard. They say if you say bad things happen. They've gagged Trump over this. Is someone going to gag Kamala so she can't speak? I mean, thankfully, the would-be assassin was stopped by the heroic action of law enforcement, says Trump, but here are a couple examples of them running their mouths. Kamala Harris repeatedly says, Trump is a threat to our democracy and fundamental rights and freedoms. Kamala, it's on us to recognize the threat Trump poses. Sourced. Does one of us have to come out alive? Ha, 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 says Kamala. Joe Biden said, it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. Joe Biden said, I meant this from the bottom of my heart. Trump is a threat to this nation. There is one existential threat. It's Donald Trump. Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He's literally a threat to everything America stands for. Trump and MAGA Republicans are a threat to the very soul of this country. They represent an extremism that threatens the very foundation of our republic, and that is a threat to this country. over and over again. There's 4 pages of this. Nancy Pelosi, multiple representatives. They say the same thing. It's their talking point. We must stop Trump, and so on and so forth. So here is more Karine now saying they don't actually say those things.
In issues and policies, we believe that there should be a conversation. There was a debate just last week, right? There should be a conversation and a back and forth.
Not really.
About that. A healthy conversation.
It was a dogpile tag
and it's
team.
crucial that we do that.
Rigged
and
by
the
your
president has
moderators.
also said, when it comes to violent rhetoric, we got to bring the temperature down. You heard that directly from
You
this
guys
president.
say it all the time.
And it is not the time to tear Americans apart. We cannot do that or divide our country.
It's your whole
The
party.
president and the vice president is always going to call that out. But they have been very clear, very forceful on condemning any form of political violence.
So do the president and vice president believe that the kind of language that Trump used in those comments I just said are contributing to the tension and divisiveness?
What kind of a stupid question is this? Is Trump blaming you for your insane rhetoric? Is Trump causing himself to be shot, basically, is what she asked?
Look, we're going to be really clear, and we've always have been. It is important to bring down the temperature, to bring that temperature down of that political.
Stop calling him a
violent
threat to
rhetoric.
democracy,
We've
then.
been very clear about that.
How about that?
And we believe, this president believes, let's not forget why he decided to run in 2020.
Charlottesville.
Was about that, was about
Fake lie.
making sure that we
Fake
bring
hoax.
the country together, that we bring people together, and it was not about dividing. And so we're going to continue to be very, very clear about that. We're going to continue to call that out. And they did. January 6th, the president and the vice president called that out. When Paul Pelosi was attacked because of political rhetoric, violent rhetoric, we called that out. And when the first incident happened a couple weeks ago, the butler, after that aftermath, the president called that out as well.
What?
And so he's very consistent. He thinks both sides should be very clear about that. It's not just the president or the vice president. Every leader, national leader, or any leader in this country should be calling out political violence and bringing the country together, not dividing it.
How about it starts with you guys?
Just to clarify, so you're saying that the president and vice president believe that former President Donald Trump should be toning down his rhetoric?
So I'll say this. President Biden has been clear-eyed about the threat that the former president represents to our democracy. He's been clear-eyed about that. From his role, let's not forget, from his role of January 6th, where he refused to accept the outcomes of free and fair elections.
It was
Look what
not a free and
happened
fair
on that day.
election. It was
Some of
rigged
you
by
were
your
there at the
agencies,
Capitol.
your
Some of you have
administration.
colleagues.
Secretary Blinken, who was not the secretary at the time, colluded with the CIA. So here's another one. Karine got blasted on this because Doocy says, are you guys going to stop with your horrific language, Karine?
2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question. The question that you're asking, it is also incredibly dangerous
What?
in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to
Yeah.
say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay.
Why? Why would he be grateful? If Trump is going to eliminate America and he's the greatest threat to the country since the Civil War, we spent a whole war after Pearl Harbor. We spent a whole war going after the Japanese, okay? A lot of people died in that battle. We had a big fight after 9/11, which resulted in 20 years of war and thousands of Americans dead. So if this is bigger than both of those things, shouldn't Trump be like Osama bin Laden? I mean, isn't Trump like Osama or like Adolf, essentially, which is what they're saying? And then they're going to turn around and say that they're thrilled he's alive. Oh gosh, we're just so glad he wasn't shot. What? He's killing the country, you just said.
From an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident. And now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And
You're calling Trump a threat to democracy.
you know,
What?
that is also incredibly dangerous. When
Okay, so Doocy can't even ask questions now. It's dangerous. So maybe they should arrest Doocy for asking dangerous questions. One person who wants to do that is Hillary Clinton. She's so upset that she is not ever going to be the president. Look at her. You can just feel it in her bones. It's emanating through her pores. It's that bitter loser vibe. Can't hide it coming out of her orifices.
Just as Mueller indicted a lot of Russians
Coming out of wherever.
who were engaged in direct election interference and boosting Trump back in 2016.
What?
But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda.
What?
And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
She's just the worst in the world. I got so many things I'd like to say about her right now, but she wants us arrested, criminally charged for saying misinformation, disinformation things, like how she's a liar and a person who undermined American democracy herself by trying to rig multiple elections against Trump. She tried to rig 2016. Let us not forget. She put forward the fake Steele dossier. It was propaganda, literally propaganda that was created by her campaign. She did it with the FBI. She did it to rig 2016. And she's going to sit here and lecture us. We need to go to jail. First person who should go to jail is you. And hopefully when Trump is back in charge, he locks her up this time.